first time in human history, you could stand in this very spot and see no ice on the top of Snæfellsjökull. What's causing this glacier to retreat more and more quickly? In fact, scientists guess that the glacier on Snæfellsjökull could completely disappear as early as 2050. In addition to all these geological wonders, Snæfellsjökull might also be the portal to the center of the Earth. Hang tight, you'll hear more about this soon. Pull into the turnout coming up on our left and park for the Snæfellsjökull viewpoint. Is Axlar Heiðar, and it plays an important role in the story of Iceland's only serial killer. Let me take you just a few miles from here. While other children played on the beaches, Axlar Björn always kept to himself. Even Axlar Björn's own mother, who was about to give up, he reached under a boulder and found a razor-sharp axe. As the years passed, travelers would sometimes vanish without a trace. Continued his apparently quiet life, but eventually neighbors grew suspicious of him. They noticed that Axlar Björn seemed to have a new horse every time they saw him. Authorities raided Axlar Björn's farm and found the remains of 18 people. It turns out that Axlar Björn had been using his axe on victims for years. He was quickly sentenced to death, but many feared that his ghost would go on to haunt the lava. Fear and Reformation, the Danish royalty began ruling Iceland with an iron fist. In 1602, they kicked all foreign merchants out of Iceland. For the next 2 centuries, Denmark instituted a complete trading monopoly over the island. If you wanted to make big money in Iceland, you had to be Danish. During this period, locals had almost no contact with the outside world. Despite this isolation, hard-working Icelanders put their heads down and focused on farming, fishing, and shearing sheep. Since the Danish king lived 1,000 miles away in a fancy palace, maybe he would finally let them be. But in June 1783, life in Iceland changed forever. On the south side of the island, a volcano known as Laki violently erupted. And then it erupted again and again. For 8 months, waves of lava poured across the landscape. Gigantic clouds of sulfur gas covered the island, altering the weather across the globe. In Iceland, the effects were deadly. Some 80% of Iceland's beloved sheep died, along with untold numbers of cattle. Famine took over the island. By the time Laki's noxious clouds dissipated, roughly a quarter of Icelanders. By the early 1900s, Denmark had placed Iceland under something called Home Rule. Basically, Icelanders had the freedom to pass laws, form political parties, and even choose a national flag, but it was still technically a Danish state. This didn't change until World War II. In 1940, Germany occupied Denmark. This effectively ended Danish control over Iceland, especially after British and American forces placed troops on the island. And after the war, Icelanders decided to make it official. On June 17, 1944, Iceland became an independent country. So why did they choose this specific date for Icelandic National Day? Well, it was John Sigurdsson's birthday, the original protester himself. Today, Icelanders celebrate National Day with parades across the country. This is always a good chance to see some Icelandic horses strutting their stuff. Next up is Reyðarfellsgjá Gorge. This is a deep, rocky ravine with a small waterfall. In the summer, you can even climb inside. The half-mile trail to the gorge is moderately challenging and takes about 20 minutes to complete. If you decide to visit the gorge, you might meet a half-man, half-troll named Balthor. He sent a guard over the ravine. So, who is Balthor? Well, he apparently lived in nearby Etna during the 800s. Balthor had 9 beautiful daughters who he loved above all else. One day, his daughters were playing with some local boys at the beach. As a joke, one of the boys pushed Helga, one of Balthor's daughters, onto an iceberg. Legend has it that Helga floated all the way to Greenland. Eventually, she found a lover and started a wholesome Greenlandic family. Quite a happy ending, but not so fast. Back in... Otherwise, continue driving.
Well done, sir. Well done.